This particular video is advanced techniques on how to create dappling effects, dappling slash texturing. So we went over this a little bit in our how to use our shadows button. One of the things that may seem a little weird about a lot of the shadows is that they're like a perfect square, right? Like that's not usually the case in real life. So when you have something like that, you have to distort your shadows because when you look at shadows in real life, they're not a perfect mirror image of what that item actually is, right? They're stretched out, they're long, just depending on where that light source is coming from. So sometimes you're going to have that light source be up here. Sometimes it's going to be down here. Either way, shadows go from the shadow to the brightness. So when you are creating a shadow, you want to distort it where the end of that shadow, where it starts, comes from that darkness and spreads out to the brighter areas. So just like before, this shadow is the one we ended up using for this tree. And as a reminder, it doesn't have to be a perfect shadow. We're just giving the effect of what it might feel or look like because we don't know what the top of this canopy is here. So this just might be good enough. Now, this is a big square, right? So when you have something that's just like a big square, how do you make it look like it's supposed to be on the ground? Well, the first thing you're going to do is, you can see we rotated it to its side, right? I want that dappling effect to be here on the ground because this is where my moonlighting is. You can squish your shadows. When you squish your shadows, it gives the effect as if it's lying on the ground, right? So we went from just a standard shadow to it's lying on the ground. So squish it up. That is okay. Make it longer. Have it stem out from where that center point was. Increase the length. The exaggerated look is actually what shadows are going to do anyway. They are stretching with the way the light shines. We have that opacity coming darker or lighter depending on how close you are to that source, so that when you're done, you can create that dappling effect that you are looking for. Now, if that dappling effect has a little bit more leaf foliage in it, you can definitely use a lot of our leaves to make that happen. Some of our leaves are going to be kind of a hard shape, I think. But again, just like before, you can rotate them, you can squish them down, you can elongate them. You can even make them smaller and add several, right? So here's a great example of that, right? So we've got one shadow here. You can just hit that duplicate button and then you can rotate it to a different direction so that it lines up in a little bit of a different way, right? You're just trying to get it to feel and look the right way for your image. Something that doesn't feel like it's overlapping, it just feels like it's part of what's happening in the image. We'll duplicate it again and again. Try your best to not overlap if you can, because the overlap is where it's going to be obvious that there's a little bit of a difference there. Same thing with the opacity. You want your opacity to feel like it is about the same level of opacity. So it's one thing just kind of adding to another. And then we can add another little piece there if we want to. We can extend something out and then let it fade out as needed. Now you can see that these are a little bit of, very rectangular shapes. Like what do you do when it's a very rectangular shape and it's not quite what you're wanting here? Maybe you do need it to come a little bit onto the sidewalk, just a bit. You want both of those to be maybe just a little bit lighter so it blends in a little bit more. The other thing that you can do for shadow work when you're creating those dappling effects is to add other types of leaves right over the top. You can, we had a very specific shape for ours, but you can lay it over with something that is even a different shape from that. And when that happens, it creates a blending effect between the two items. So you can make something really small. So we're going to make it really small. And then we're going to darken it up. And it changes the shape and texturing and the feel of that spot, if that makes sense. So that's really what we're going for. We're going for how can we change it up? How can we make it feel so it looks and feels the right way? Again, you can always distort it too. Sometimes distortion is enough to make something look and feel the way you want it to. If that means you're dragging it off the page, drag it off the page, because it's really not going to be clear to your client where that shadow starts and where it ends. You can see here how much we've blended that out, and we stop it before it hits that vertical wall. So now you have a beautiful blend. You have the dappling effect that you're looking for. So really important. We also went over texturing earlier, but I will show you on a different house a texturing effect. Let me see if I have one here. Let's see here. We might have one on one of these. Okay, so this is a great example of what you can do for a texturing effect. One of the big things with texturing is that you're able to add that stonework in such a way that it really deepens what you're looking at. That's part of the art and joy of, landscaping and shadow work. So we can do something like a wall texture. We can find something that looks a little bit like the stone we're looking at. We can add that over. And then again, it's all about the distortion. We're making it as thin and as short as we need to be. So it gets as close as we can get to matching the bricks that we're already working with, right? Like that's kind of close. I'm probably going to lighten up the opacity a little bit, but I want it to be dark enough that it adds grain to what we're looking at, right? You just want it to feel a little deeper. As you get closer to that light source, you can go a little bit darker with it. And as you're going away from the light source, it's going to get progressively lighter and lighter. So great way to really bring out texturing that you need in that shadow work to create the dappling shadowing effects that you've been trying to accomplish.